the evaluation of the Colorado Department of Corrections budgeting practices, May 2025 status report. And we will welcome Mr. Carstens back up. Yes. D. That's the Colorado Department of Corrections budgeting. Okay, great. And Ms. Collin, please introduce yourself and Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michelle Collin, Deputy State Auditor, and I'm going to turn it over to Derek Johnson. He was the contract monitor on the evaluation. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Johnson. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As just mentioned, Attachment D is the status update on the evaluation of the budget practices at the Department of Corrections. It was formally released in June of 2025. It was statutorily required that we do this, and we contracted out with PFM Group Consulting to do the evaluation. It included 9 total findings with multiple subparts. The findings covered a number of areas, including developing a budget process that produces more consistent funding to reduce minimum mid-year changes, having more transparency in personnel budgeting requests, looking into the department's recruitment and retention strategies, especially for hard-to-fill positions, improving the methodology for calculating case-related operational costs, implementing processes to make budget requests clearer and accurate, budgeting for correctional industries that aligns more closely with actual revenues and expenditures, more transparency in the canteen reporting on inmate benefits, and then clarifying, defining, and setting medical-related copays and expenses. The department did agree with all of the recommendations and have reported that of the 34 recommendation subparts, 30 are implemented, 3 are partially implemented, and 1 is no longer applicable, as the department went with a baseline budget based on actual true cost as opposed to historical costs. As part of our process, we requested, received, and reviewed documentation and have concluded that it supports the implementation status of the recommendations as reported by the department. And with that, we do have representative from the department to provide further information and answer any questions you may have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Carstens. Yeah, that one's just not working for some reason today. There we go.
How about that? Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. As I mentioned before, my name is Mitch Carstens. I am the Director of Finance and Administration for the Department of Corrections. Over the last year, we have been working extremely diligently to work through all 9 recommendations and 34 sub-recommendations that were in the 2025 performance audit. Over the last couple of months, we have sent what we were calling our closeout memos. So as we were finishing the recommendations, we were sending those memos to all of you, as well as JBC and the Judiciary Committees. That was recommendations 3, 6, 7, 8, and 9 were all completed over the last 8 months. We also then sent recently, at the end of last week, some closeout memos for recommendations 1, 2, 4, and 5. I will say this has taken a lot of time to look at the entire way in which the base budget of DOC is set by looking at actual costs and being able to adjust that and correct those. A lot of times, as a state agency, we are sometimes told to just figure it out, and we figured it out. We did that for decades. And the cost of what we were doing was not necessarily based on the true cost of what it took to do that. It was more what needed to be done to make the budget, one, balanced, but also to provide the minimal services that those in our care needed. We have done the due diligence. I would be remiss by not giving a huge thank you to Linda and to Suzanne, our budget director, for working through this. There has been countless hours and countless people across our department that have been working on this to get it to the place that we are at. We have started to roll out all of those recommendations. Some of them are reporting structures. Some are on the base process of how we do it. The last component of this really will be the November 1st budget submission that we are currently working on with the governor's office to realign the mechanisms and the process that we are using in order to create some of those base budgets and working on the templates that go with all of those objects. Those memos were quite long, so if you have questions, I'm happy to answer any of those questions that have gone through. But I think we have done and put in the work to achieve and accomplish the questions that were set out, and knowing that we had a lot of work to do that was called out by PFM that we needed to work on. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Karstens. Do we have any questions for Mr. Karstens? Representative Bacon.
Thank you. Is this the appropriate time to ask questions about the recommendations and the efforts made, Madam Chair?
Sure.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
For Mr. Carson. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm curious about your transparency, the personnel questions. I think the issues, we go way back with corrections. And so when I hear from some of the personnel with corrections, particularly, behind the walls, I am curious about your thoughts and how you are addressing the difference between vacancies and people who are on leave and the balances being made, or how that shows up in your accounting, if that makes sense.
Mr. Karstens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Rep. Bacon. Personal services in DOC is a very complex cookie to crack open. So with one of the largest workforces in the state, about 6,500 employees, to break that down both on a day-to-day basis and what is needed is complex. So what we did in the audit was multi-layered. The first was to create a standard way of calculating how many posts are needed in each facility. And so we worked with NIC, which is the National Institute of Corrections, to come up with that. And so we did that evaluation at all of our facilities. That covers, though, just our correctional officer series. It does not cover support staff, clinical services, any of those things. So we had to go back in and create that best practice about what that looks like. What does coverage look like in all of those areas? We have successfully done that. It took a lot of time to be able to do that, reviewed by multiple layers and entities to make sure that that is correct. So I think that's the first part. The second part then that we needed to review was our relief factor. And so relief factor is how many individuals you need to cover one posted position. What we were sitting at is about a 1.6 relief factor. That hadn't changed in about 30 years for the department. What we came to, both from PFM as well as we did a facility master plan who helped calculate as well, and then we did our own calculation, is that the relief factor should be sitting closer to about 1.8 to 2.0. And what that means is you need 1.8 people to cover one posted position. That negative 0.2 positions doesn't sound like a lot. It's 0.2 positions. What that calculates out to, though, is about 550 positions across the department that are needed to cover just the basics of the posted positions that we have in DOC. And so where that shows up as, to your question, is people then are overwhelmed. They're forced doubles, they're forced overtime, it affects mental health, it affects everything kind of downstream. It affects then posting of positions and a multitude of other things. So to start that process, we have, and the JBC did grant in this fiscal year, a change in the shift relief factor for the Canyon City complexes as a starting point to move us up to that 1.8 for just the correctional officer series. We have a number of markers and matrices that we are working on with JBC to track that on a month-to-month basis to show how that benefits our staff in order to do that. The other way that that shows up then is in our leave cases. Our leave cases are really, when we say leave, that could be military leave, it could be family or FMLA leaves. There's a bunch of different things within that category. Right now, DOC is sitting over 30% of our individuals that are work for us that are currently on some type of protected leave. How that shows up is then again, overtime, doubles, a multitude of different things because those posts have to be covered. Good example, I was on some chats this weekend with some facilities that couldn't meet their minimum staffing requirement for the day. And so that means that we have to restrict movement, we have to restrict programming, we have to do those things because the basic necessities of having enough employees can't be met. And so it's a complicating factor between all of those things.
Rep. Bacon.
Sorry. I'm always short, so I'm sorry. I want to ask you, and I think also the auditor, this is something I'd like to better understand and see the math for. For what it's worth, this is the continued issue that we have with trying to figure out the budget. When you're in front of us for SMART, I hear you talking about matrices, but we don't see this. And instead, what we always see is bed count, an increased budget, right? And considering we're supposed to switch from that, I'd like to understand that. I will be visiting your facilities. I was at Lyman like 2 weeks ago. And so the other thing that is of interest and concern to me, and I'm curious about this from the auditor as well, when I hear shifts and shift relief, I would also like to know the difference between the people who are not necessarily certified or categorized who should be covering these shifts. I'm hearing stories of teachers doing security, and I don't know if you are differentiating through the audit in these positions or not. And if that is the case, that is a question for the auditing team. I'm not sure, and that is a question for corrections as well, because I would like to see those numbers. How many people do you have who are supposed to be doing corrections per their actual position, and how many people are supposed to be doing other things that are doing corrections like work? Because we need to understand the difference. The other thing that I've heard from those who've been in the field for quite some time, and I don't know how this fits, what kind of floating staffing constructions have we had before, where somebody is in a floating position waiting to be called up for an absent, someone who may not be there, and then help us understand truly what the numbers are. So there's a difference between how many people are working in the facility versus how many people whose job this is, particularly. That's something that I know my colleagues are trying to understand and differentiate for purposes of understanding these concerns. This is also something we've heard from WINS over and over again. And so is there a way to understand the difference in these positions? And is that something that you can pull out and help us understand?
Mr. Kirstens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Rep. Bacon. I'll start with that one. If you guys want to add more, you certainly can. So now that these matrices are done, I think we can most certainly work with you to share those. Again, it's based on the NIC evaluations of what that is. What it takes into account is how many posts are needed, so that's one person to do a job. And then it does take in factors within the facility, so sight lines, number of cameras, level of classification of those individuals. So it calls into all of those things. I think we can definitely share those and bring that forward. What NIC does, though, is stops at the CO series. And when you look at, to your point of looking at teachers being called in and other individuals, that's where it stopped. And we knew we had to go further than that. So what we really looked at is posted positions. And so that is a job that needs to be handled by a person within the facility. So that could be a nurse's post, that could be a teacher's post, that could be whatever, or a CO series, and then expanded that out. Each one has a slightly different shift relief factor based on the number of hours they're working, days of the week, things like that, and if the post is 24 hours or if it's 16 hours or whatever that may be. So we can kind of share with you kind of the process that we use to do that. We have been tracking those that have been posting out of series. So we can provide that information of what that looks like. To your question about floating positions, that's what an increased relief factor does for us. So it brings in additional people that can cover those posted positions to help when somebody is out on medical leave, vacation, sick time, whatever that may call outs for any number of reasons. That's what those positions are designed for, is to be able to help that. So what we are hoping is that while the shift relief factor is being implemented, we will be able to see the fruits of that and be able to say, here is the benefit of that. Number of overtimes went down, number of posting out of classification went down, number of leaves went down based on FMLA or family or whatever that may be. We were given 135 FTE for the Canyon City locations, excluding Skyline. And so of those 135, beginning of last week, so my numbers are a little bit behind, but end of last week, we had already hired over 100 of those individuals. So much so that we did 2 training academies that are currently going on starting July 6th. Because what we wanted to do was to, one, get those individuals in, but then also be able to see the success of those and all the indicators that you are talking about. And so we'll be reporting those to JBC. We are happy to share that information with you all as well, if you wish, about how those indicators are being matched or helped by a change in the relief factor.
Mr. Johnson, did you have anything to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rep. Bacon. The short of it is not really. As the contractor did most of the work, I can't speak to detailed work that they did in that area, but my understanding of the finding itself, what is in the report, it was based on what positions specifically were needed. So what was the position description? Was it a security position versus a teacher? It was based on those posted positions, not the, but Mr. Carstens could correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Mr. Carstens, did you have any?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Rep. Bacon.
So, to be clear, posted positions are not necessarily the same as who fills the positions. I think that's just what I'm getting at. We know that there needs to be somebody, I wrote down, somebody needs to be there for the sight line, but I want to know, does it matter if it's someone whose job it is to do correctional work? That's what I'm trying to understand. Is that differentiated any actual where?
Mr. Carstens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rep. Bacon, yes, it is. So in those NIC evaluations, so a post is, you are correct, not a person, it is a post. So I have to be in the command center, and so that's one person in that command center. So that's a post. It doesn't necessarily say who that person is. To your point, what we do track and have continued to track is individuals working outside of that. So if a teacher is posting up into a command center, we are tracking that, and we can get you that information about what that looks like. We are trending down in that process. We have had some overtime mitigation things that we have been, and we're pulling back on that, that was requiring some additional posting of individuals. But yes, we can get that for you.
Okay. That's the information. Oh, sorry, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, I realized I wasn't recognized. Sorry.
No. And I will, can I just add one more thing?
Mr. Carson.
Sorry. Just one more thing. I think the way, while we have individuals that are hired for teachers and clinicians and things like that too, I think the goal of the department is always the safety and security of those that are with us and in our care. And sometimes that does require us to do additional work and to post into positions that require the safety of all those that are in our care as well as our other staff members. And so while we try to mitigate that as much as possible, that is our first priority. And so while we will try to work on mitigating that, and we have the designs to do that and some requests to help mitigate that with relief factor and things like that, that also is the nature of the business, is we've got to make sure that those mandatory posts are covered throughout the facility too.
Okay, and Rep. Bacon, one more.
Okay, thank you. I'd like those numbers maybe sooner than later. And lastly, do either of you have a sense of how many positions have been contracted out? So for example, I did meet a nurse, a contract nurse. If anyone has those numbers that have been, again, who are contractors working for DOC, particularly in the DOC facilities, I would like to know that as well.
Mr. Kirstens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rep. Bacon, we can get you that as well. It's all in our clinical services, but we can get you that as well. We track all of that. Yep.
All right. With that, I think we're going to move on. Thank you, Mr. Kirstens. Appreciate your comments today.
Thank you.
Thank you.